I think the contemplation of the five aggregates, in fact, the contemplation of both, is something that we find in the Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing. And what you find there, of course, you find the first 12 steps, which are all really about calming the mind and calming down. It is not without vipassana, it's not without insight, of course, but it's the main emphasis there is on the calming aspect of things. And then when you come to the end of the 12th step, then you have the anicca nupassi, viraga nupassi, nirodha nupassi, patinisagga nupassi. And that is really the insight part. I think we can all agree on that, because the words that are used, they are typical words that have to do with insight. And anicca, viraga, and nirodha, they are just different degrees of understanding impermanence. Anicca is the impermanence of things maybe coming and going. Viraga is the impermanence of things being impermanent in a certain direction, the direction of fading away. And nirodha is the kind of the full impermanence, when things kind of cease completely. So these are different levels of impermanence. I think all of those levels are useful to some extent, but ideally you want to have the nirodha nupassi, where things cease, because that is where you understand impermanence fully. And then you have the patinisagga nupassi at the very end, and that is where you abandon things at root, because you no longer have an interest in things that are out of control, and that they disappear, and then they come, and then you can't really hold on to them. So that is where the insight leads on to the abandoning of things in a more deep way. So then the interesting question is, in those contexts, well, what exactly is it that we are contemplating in this way here? Yeah. And I think what we are contemplating in this process is that we are looking back to the process of calming that we did before, starting with the awareness of the long and short breath, all the way to the vimochayang chittang. Vimochayang chittang is step number 12, when you are literally liberating the mind. And that whole process is, I think, what you are contemplating in the last 4 steps. What else would it be? So what is that process? That process can be looked at from 2 different angles. It can be looked at from the angle of the 5 aggregates, or from the 6 sense bases. So if you look at it from the process of the 5 aggregates, well, then what you see is that you see the form realm, the rupa realm, gradually changing as you move through the steps. Gradually, eventually, it is also like fading away. The deeper you go, the less there is remaining of the rupa loka, until eventually you come to the vimochayang chittang, and a very large part of the rupa loka is completely gone. All that is left is the fine material realm at that particular point. You can see the same thing with the other aggregates. You can see the same thing with feelings. Feelings are changing, becoming more and more blissful. The bliss eventually is fading away, the viraga of the bliss. And eventually it takes you all the way to upeka in the 4th jhana. So you can see the feelings ceasing, certain feelings disappearing. Same thing with perceptions. The perception is changing all the way through, moving in a certain direction. And eventually certain perceptions ceasing altogether. Chaitana, Sankara, the 4th khandha, exactly the same thing. You enter a jhana, all Sankara is basically gone. There's no will anymore operating in a very deep state of samadhi. So you see the Sankara khandha gradually, first of all, changing, then gradually viraga, fading away, and eventually ceasing altogether. So you are actually contemplating that experience that you've been through, and you kind of think about it in terms of the 5 khandhas, because the 5 khandhas is a very useful framework, because the 5 khandhas is precisely where the self tends to reside, somewhere in those 5 khandhas, and then you can see it in that context. But then you can do the same thing with the senses, exactly the same process. You can see how the senses are fading away, initially the external senses, and eventually, when you enter into a jhana state, the external senses are completely gone. They're no longer there. All you have left is with the mind sense. And then as you develop the meditation even further throughout the jhana experiences, the mind sense itself is gradually disappearing. Consciousness is becoming more and more refined. Chunks of consciousness are being abandoned. And then you can see the 6. So there are 2 I would say they are the same. I would maybe say that depending on your proclivities, depending on your personality, what feels more natural for you, you can see this see it from either view. Really, either viewpoint is